Hi, what is going on? You are watching and listening today to my live podcast, Sex with Stevie. This is the sister podcast to Tag's podcast, aka Talk About Gay Sex, that comes out every Tuesday night. This is my live show that comes out every Thursday night, and I am so glad you are joining me tonight. We have so much to get into tonight on this Thursday night. I have some special guests calling in. I can't wait for my special guest, McLeod, also aka Shirley U Jest, is calling in. She just finished her drag show a few minutes ago, and it was awesome. As always, her Thursday night show. We're going to talk to her in a little bit. You can call in if you really want to and weigh in on some hot gay sex topics. The number to call is 908-312-1015. And let's just get into it before my first caller calls in. So it's Thursday, and it's a crazy Thursday out there, an interesting Thursday out there, I have to say. Gay Pride was just launched June 1st, so we are officially in Gay Pride. If you're joining me along, cheers to that. Cheers to Gay Pride 2020. For so many of us, it's going to be a virtual celebration, and I'm really excited about it in a lot of ways because it would have actually, this year is the 50th anniversary for prides like San Francisco. It's also the 50th anniversary for New York, and last year we celebrated World Pride here in New York, but we also celebrated Stonewall, and this year's actually the 50th anniversary. Not to fret, because there's a lot of online virtual events that are actually happening. I know that this Saturday the AIDS Walk is happening, and this year it's virtual, and I just looked at the New York AIDS Walk happening this Sunday, and people like Gloria Estefan are going to perform. So I really want to tune into that because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for that. Thank you for joining me today on this Thursday. I wanted to start off tonight with the memorial today for George Floyd, and I wanted to say his name, George Floyd, and I wanted to continue to state, as I stated the other day on Tag's podcast, that here at Tag's podcast, we stand with Black Lives Matter. We march just along, and I find it interesting, ironic, whatever you want to call it, befitting that as we kick off Pride Week, Pride Month, that it's imperative that we stand alongside Black Lives Matter and what is going on in the world right now. And I wanted to say his name, George Floyd. We remember, we think about you, we think about your family. We will continue to fight the fight, and I wanted to say his name and say really what we stand for. And before I get a little bit into it, I wanted to read just a little bit of a passage out of something that I've read this book before. It's by Eckhart Tolle. It's called A New Earth. And a friend of mine who is going to be on the show again, Sebastian Lacaze, reminded me about this book and how this book is so relevant right now. I mean, just even if you were to read the title, A New Earth, you know that we are going through something right now. And I read it before, and I know the importance of this, and I've read other Eckhart Tolle's books before, but I thought I opened up to a passage and randomly, and I thought, wow, this is a good passage to read. It's not very long, but it does have to do with our ego, and I'm just going to read it to you and see if it fits with this little bit of it. It says, and let me put my glasses on because it will help. A person in the grip of ego, however, does not recognize suffering as suffering, but will look upon it as the only appropriate response in any given situation. The ego, in its blindness, is incapable of seeing the suffering it inflicts on itself and on others. Unhappiness is an ego-created mental emotional disease that has reached epidemic proportions. It is the inner equivalent of the environmental pollution of our planet. Negative states such as anger, anxiety, hatred, resentment, discontent, envy, jealousy, and so on, are not recognized as negative, but as totally justified and are further misperceived, not as self-created, but as caused by someone else or some external factor. I am holding you responsible for my pain. This is what by implication the ego is saying. The ego cannot distinguish between a situation and its interpretation of and reaction to that of situation. You might say, "What a dreadful day," without realizing that the cold, the wind, and the rain, or whatever condition you react to, are not dreadful. They are as they are. What is dreadful is your reaction, your inner resistance to it, and the emotion that is created by that resistance. In Shakespeare's words, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. What is more, suffering or negativity is often misperceived by the ego as pleasure, because up to a point, the ego strengthens itself through it. For example, anger or resentment strengthen the ego enormously by increasing the sense of separateness, emphasizing the otherness of others, and creating a seemingly unsatiable fortress-like mental position of righteousness. If you were able to observe the physiological changes that take place inside your body when possessed by such negative states, how they adversely affect the functioning of the heart, the digestive and immune system, and countless other bodily functions, it would become abundantly clear that such states are indeed pathological, are forms of suffering and not pleasure. And finally, whenever you are in a negative state, there is something in you that wants the negativity, that perceives it as pleasurable, or that believes it will get you what you want. Otherwise, who would want to hang out on negativity, make themselves and others miserable, and create disease in the body? So whenever there is negativity in you, if you can be aware at that moment that there is something in you that takes pleasure in it or believes it has a useful purpose, you are becoming aware of the ego directly. The moment this happens, your identity has shifted from ego to awareness. This means the ego is shrinking and awareness is growing. Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. Just had to read that for you because as I read this, I can't help but see the parallels of what's going on now in general and how myself, my own ego, at times can creep into my own life. And, you know, if that brings anything for you, I'm glad. We're going to get into it. You are watching my live podcast, Sex with Steve V, my sister-brotherly podcast. Sister-brother, actually, as I'm experiencing feminine and masculine energy these days. Two Tags Podcast, aka talk about gay sex. I'm going to go to my homepage here because you can also call in at 908-312-1015. And Sebastian Lacaz, oh, thank you. I see you saw, and you inspired me to read that book, and thank you for reminding me about A New Earth. I'm going to read the whole book, and it's a great one. Greg Hoffer, hello from Loveland. Before my first guest calls, I also wanted to talk to you. I don't know why I'm a little nervous today, but I am. But just there's a lot going on, and I'm not afraid to tell you that there's a lot of anxiety going on. But I'm going to read that book because I think it's going to help. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's my dear friend. He's in his 80s, and this is a show called Sex with Stevie. And he was asking me earlier today, as he was checking in on me, how I am doing as a monk these days, M-O-N-K. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you know how you are. I mean, prior to this pandemic, in other words, you know how you are, Steve Rodriguez, the sexual one out of our group. And how are you doing, essentially, being a monk and not having sex? And I had to, clarify with him, and I put on a face and I said, I'm doing good, actually. Surprisingly so. In fact, I'm not even sure how what sex is anymore. It's going to be redefined in so many different ways. But yeah, I think this has been a reflective time in so many ways. The quarantine, currently what's going on, and well, a lot of masturbation, but beyond all of that, I don't even know. I'm going to talk about this with my co-host in a little bit about sex, because it's not that I forgot or don't want to ever have sex. Of course I do. But his words struck me that, wow, what will sex be like again? And, I don't know. Words to ponder. Here we go.
Hello.
Phil.
Hey.
Hi. Sorry about that. I'm changing all this electronic stuff here and having a tough time here, but I think I figured it out, and you're on the line, yes?
Excellent. Yes. No worries. I'm glad that it all works out.
Awesome. Yes. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, my first guest here, I'm going to just change is Phil McLeod. Is that correct?
That's right.
Phil McLeod, also known as Shirley U Jest, correct? As drag.
That's also right.
First of all, thank you for doing the show, because you have your own live show that you had earlier tonight, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I do my jukebox night every Thursday night. It's a sort of a song request kind of quarantine cabaret show.
I watched you tonight, and tonight you donated all of your tip money to... Explain what you donated all of your tip money to, because it had to do with protesting, and essentially if you get arrested, you're sending money towards people if they get arrested during protesting. Explain that.
Well, the Bail Project has offices all over the country, and they are fighting the racial and economic disparities in our country by helping post bail for those who can't post for themselves. And this is heavily given to those who are black and people of color. And I was looking through the master doc of bail programs. This is a national fund network that is working very closely with protesters who are out for the Black Lives Matter movement and protesting curfews and all that. The New York Bail Fund says that they are good. Minneapolis has said that they're well funded, but there are still people out there across the country who do not have access to the funds they need to reunite them with their families. And so I took all the money that I made this evening. I actually made a nice little sum that I can just put in and do my part, do at least one small part to try and stem back the tide of racism and white supremacy.
I love it. I love it. We should explain. You go by your regular name is Philip McLeod, but Shirley U Jest. And recently, I've become obsessed with how people come up with their drag names. And real quickly, how did you come up with Shirley U Jest?
Well, I have to say, I am a huge fan of slapstick vaudeville comedy, and one of my favorite comedic movies is Airplane. Like, I howl. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. Every time Leslie Nielsen I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Oh my God. The slapstick in that movie is, yeah, I might have to watch that this weekend.
So funny. The comedy's perfect. And so I sat there just like thinking about names, and I thought, like, my name has to be hilarious. And I thought of that joke, and I thought, oh, Shirley, what about Shirley U Jest? Like, it seemed like such a natural thing. And I've loved the name ever since.
I love it. I love it. I've been experimenting with my own drag name so far, and I haven't gotten there yet. And I don't know if my friend Sebastian's still watching, but he was giving me a hard time on it. But what do you think of the name, if I was to go for it, as Donna Matrix?
Donna Matrix. I like that. That's cute. Donna Matrix.
It's kind of cool, right? Do you get it? Wink, wink.
Yeah. It brings in the leather and the BDSM. Oh, that's so cool. I like that. Oh.
Awesome.
I think there's a lot of personality that gets put into a drag name. Like, there's so much funness to it.
Absolutely. Well, you've been doing your live, I know you perform around New York City at Rock Bar and several other locations pre-quarantine. Mm-hmm. You have started this weekly Thursday live show earlier tonight before mine. I was watching it. I loved you. I didn't realize that
Thank you.
You sing, and like, you're not just lip syncing, you're singing. And I was like, wow. And
yep, I am singing.
Tonight's was I'm so glad I tuned in today, because you put everything, it was a very 1970s, 70s tribute. And I don't know if you can know, I don't know if you're watching, but I've got David Bowie behind me here, and you did Rebel Rebel, which...
yes.
Not sure. Yeah, not sure when that was. Was that 70s or even earlier? But
oh yeah, that was 70s.
That was 70s. Okay. But you
that
all
was like right at the end of this glam rock days.
Okay, and then you did. First of all, you did the amazing Gladys Knight, one of my favorite songs. And I used to work at an R&B radio station. That was how I got my start in radio. And
no way.
All of that music, what I was listening to you, and it was fun hearing you discover it. How did you choose to do the 70s, and what was that about?
I was wondering that myself, because I know that I made the choice about a week and a half ago to do the 70s theme. I usually choose the theme. If I can choose it 2 weeks in advance, that's great. But I try to have a theme ready before the end of my next show, in order to have something in order to have a theme to work on for the next week. But I was asking David, was that Monday?
David,
or
your boyfriend.
Yep, my wonderful, wonderful man.
Yes, we love David.
Indeed. Who doesn't? But I asked him, was it Monday or Tuesday? Because I wasn't sure if it was motivated by the George Floyd murder, or if it was something that I was turning over subconsciously for a while, or if this was something that just like felt like the right next thing. But I remember sitting on the couch and turning to David and said, I think I want to do the 70s, because that is a decade that I'm not terribly familiar with, or at least one that I haven't studied as closely as a lot of others. and it made so much sense the more I looked at it. The way that our country was in such dire straits, our economy was in the toilet. We had desegregation, but there were still riots, and there was still a lot of turmoil that was going on. So there was so much that felt very real and very prescient for me the more that I looked at all the music that was being made at the time.
What's interesting is the first time I ever saw you perform was at Rock Bar, and you were hosting a night, and I know you're much younger than certainly me, and you and the 70s, and you had embodied Barbra Streisand, and I'm a big Barbra Streisand fan, and I kind of came late to Barbra Streisand myself, even in the early Barbra, and you did such an amazing interpretation, and I'm just wondering how someone so young embraced such a classic like Barbra and didn't go like a lot of your counterparts that do drag for, you know, a lot of the current music that's out there today.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for mentioning Barbra. That's magical. And I almost did do Woman in the Moon this evening. I had done it a couple of weeks before, so I figured I should at least try to keep it new, but I almost did Barbra Star is Born. So,
ooh, and you could have done the main event, I think. I'm not sure if that was
right?
70s, 80s, I'm not sure, but yeah.
So, but yeah, like you know, I grew up with a mom that really understood me, and so she actually taught children's choir when she was just making her start, and she taught me how to sing. So and my mom was the one who really got me involved in musical theater. So I think my mom spent a lot of time early on in my childhood just kind of breeding me for the musical theater scene. You know, like every single Christmas and birthday was the VHS copies of Oklahoma, and then the soundtrack to Hello Dolly, and then there was a lot of instilling the classics in me, and I really remember seeing the Hello Dolly movie with Barbra Streisand and falling in love with that music, and then just like playing that soundtrack over and over like the little gay boy that I was. Like every single day was Just Leave Everything to Me, and Love Is Only Love. Like I really came to enjoy and bring that music closer to my heart.
Well, I'm so glad you have done that and you embrace that, and for your mother. And I really enjoyed tonight's performance because of your live singing and because of the music that you chose. I mean, people like Gladys Knight and a lot of, you know, Rebel Rebel all spoke to really what's going on. And for you to donate all your tips to a cause that I didn't even think of when people perhaps get arrested is such a good, send me the link to that and I will post it on tagspodcast.com, because I think it's important information if you are out there protesting and you do find yourself in trouble, to know where you can turn to. And that's one of the things that you were putting your money towards, right?
Absolutely. I will send that link to you and make sure that there are more people who can get access to that.
The other reason I wanted you on the show, Phil, was because, and I don't know if you can see, but I put a title for you out there on our live stream right now, and you have a picture of yourself in drag. Half of your face is in drag, and the other half is as Philip. And I've become more and more interested, obsessed on the dualities that we all possess in ourselves. And I know, like yourself, you've become really involved in the leather community, particularly a lot with a guy that's been on our show here, Master Joshua. And
yes.
I just wanted to talk about that duality and I know we're all complicated. It's not that hard to understand. But can you just talk a little bit about how you found this other side of yourself that's kinky?
I'm very glad you asked me about that. I've been doing a lot of work trying to pick apart the intersectionality of my gender fluidity and my drag and leather, and how that all comes together, because there is so much duality that we must honor in ourselves. And I'm so glad you mentioned Joshua, because Master Joshua is such a marvelous person. He's the one who really kind of helped bring me into that. Originally, I met him, let's see, that was 2017. I did a movie with him, actually, with one of our for one of our mutual friends. The scene took place in a leather bar, and they were dividing people up for extras for what they were supposed to do, and then they asked, okay, who wants to be flogged? And I said, well, I'll be flogged. I've never done it, but okay. And so they pointed me over to Master Joshua, and got my very first flogging from Master Joshua over a 2.5-hour period of ramping us up. The cameras would roll, so he would ramp me up, and he would flog me and do the whole thing, and then the cameras would stop and they would pause, and then he would bring me back down a little bit, and keep the scene going, but sort of bring me back down so I don't have to be on, and then ramp me back up again to the cameras again, and then bring it back down, and by the time we were done, we were doing last shots, and everybody was just standing there watching us, because we were just letting this scene go full force, and it was incredible. It was about that time that I was getting really introduced to the scene, and I got involved in a relationship with somebody who became my dominant. He gave me the tools and the learning, and taught me some of the psychology, and brought me in on all that. But Master Joshua was the one who really brought me into the fold, and he's the one who invited me to the now defunct corrosion party that we hope to one day bring back. But he brought me into that, and then I started doing workshops with him and getting involved in the scene and starting to go to parties. I owe Master Joshua a lot for doing that for me, because he has mentored me through some very tough times in my life. He has always shown me to be an equal, a friend, a person to count on, and he has shown me a great, wonderful world that I can be a part of, that I can show myself and do some really great things for our community.
As it's Gay Pride Month, and as people are on varying degrees of either coming out, exploring, just what would be your advice for someone that wants to explore another side of themselves, albeit drag or their kinky side, that you would want to share with people as we enter this Pride Month?
I'm glad that you asked me that, because a lot of times the people that I meet who ask me of my services, who want to know more about what I do, they are very reserved, and a lot of times they will either, if not openly apologize for themselves, say, oh, I'm sorry, this is weird, or say, I'm just, or whether they do one of those passive apologies for themselves. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry for being this way, or I'm just a nerd or dork or this way. My response to those people is never ever apologize for yourself. The one thing that we can do in this world to take one of the biggest steps ever toward doing something better is not apologizing for being who we are, because most of the time those parts that we apologize for, that we're ashamed of, are celebrated by 10 to 1 the people who actually care and matter in our lives. So going into this Pride, going into this month of revolution, of changing things, never, ever, ever apologize for the person that you are.
Wow. I'm hanging on to every word. Philip McLeod, Shirley U Jest, thank you so much for calling in. I want to
thank you.
I've listed any ways that you want people to follow you so that they know when to tune in. I know you're live every Thursday night on your Instagram. I put it on there, but do you want to throw out a link or anything like that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll send you links to my profiles and stuff, but I'm on Instagram at Think Out Loud. Loud is Leod, or you can just search Shirley U Jest, Shirley U Jest, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and hit me up because I do the show every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And I've got some other cool stuff coming up too, so stay tuned for more stuff to come.
Thank you so much, Philip. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I love what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's an honor to be on the show.
Oh my gosh, okay. We'll talk soon, yes?
Yes, please. I would love to. Stay safe out there.
Okay, bye-bye. Kodi?
Hey.
Hi, sorry. I know, I've been changing this live thing around, but I'm glad you're here. How you doing?
I'm good, boo. How are you?
I'm really good. My co-host Kodi, who we started this live show way back when, before quarantine, and we were supposed to be sitting next to each other all along, and then the quarantine happened and the coronavirus happened, and we both got the coronavirus, or I know I have. And
I'm pretty sure I got it too. We got it probably at the same time. And I know that I'm going to be sitting there very soon. So
you are.
I can't wait.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yes. Kodi, we always have to check in with you first things off before, if anyone hasn't been watching the show, I know it's redundant to you, Kodi, but you were seeing a guy pre-quarantine and you've been going pretty strong with some ebbs and flows throughout the whole situation. How does it look this week?
Yeah, so we had a video date, I think it was Saturday, and it went well. We spoke, we talked, we laughed, what you do on a date. And then I set something up so we could actually physically meet, like in a park, space to where we could, with our masks on.
Yeah.
But I know, right? The whole the protests and all that stuff happened, and he was going he went to almost all the protests, and especially
he did. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, he did. It's amazing. And I'm going to see my great aunt, and she's 90, and I don't want to expose myself to COVID at all. So I decided to stay in the house and support in different ways.
I love that. Okay.
So we weren't able to see each other because he's been out in the world and I have been in quarantine.
Got it. But things are still going strong. And are you sexting, or have you had any sort of sex that you can share with us to give us some?
No sex yet, just with myself. That's all.
Okay, good. Because I got called a monk by a friend of mine, and who's in his 80s, and said, "Well, you know how you are. How are you handling being a monk these days?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." But to be honest, I haven't really missed. I mean, of course, I've missed sex, and masturbation and all that stuff is in full effect. But I mean, and I was like, God, and it's not like I'll forget how to have sex when I'm able to meet up with somebody. But I think I'm going to take my time with it. I don't know. I'm not.
No, not me.
And it's not like I'm sexual anymore. I'm totally sexual. It's interesting. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
This week, I completely went to another level as far as like missing sex is concerned, and my masturbation game. I stepped it up all the way.
Really?
I got reacquainted with my flesh jack.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so much. I mean, like, it's just something different. It's, you know, some nights I like the hand, and some nights I like the flesh jack, and so it's like having two lovers. So
I love it, and I've got mine flesh jack readily available over here as I look to the left, so I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, I wanted to talk with you about some things that. So, you know, I do the show on Tuesday, and I did it with my co-host the other day, and we recorded the show on Monday. And we recorded the show on Monday, and it was just coming off of the weekend. I hadn't talked to my co-host in a minute. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about on the show, it happened to be the show is coming out on June 1st, which would have been the kickoff, or is the kickoff of Gay Pride Month. And I had a conversation with my sister, who's often my producer. We work together a lot. And I said, you know, how I had a conversation with her, and I said, you know, I really want to mention and talk about initially about how it's Gay Pride Month. It's the 50th anniversary of Pride here in New York City. It's the 50th anniversary of the Pride in San Francisco. And how can we bring on Pride Month without acknowledging what's going on with the protesting that's going on, albeit George Floyd, and just all of the atrocities that have gone on. And I wanted to make a major announcement that Tag's podcast, Talk About Gay Sex, stands in alignment 100% with Black Lives Matter. And that was my overall goal when I started that episode. And it's interesting because we got talking about the episode, and one of the things as we were going, and I could hear protesters outside my window, as could my co-host, who doesn't live far from me, Lincoln. And we were just saying, oh, yes, we can hear the protesters outside and such. And we had just come off of a weekend that had been, the curfew was enacted, and that was the thing. So I did start talking about the looters, the people that were breaking into various businesses, and how I didn't stand for that, and how I thought that the violence that we were seeing, I think I really went strong on that side of it. My overall goal was to say that we stand for Black Lives Matter. Somebody wrote in, a listener to the show, and said that they were disgusted about how we handled it. And I could, you know, your ego and everything at first initially wants to respond because you hate to get, particularly when you feel misread. But one of the things that they were saying, it's an African-American gay listener, and I say that because that's how they identified themselves, as an African-American, a black, gay, former, I would add, listener of the show, and they didn't like how we, or I would say me, because I think I was the one that went on a little bit about the looters, and how that I may have gone on a little bit overboard, but that's a part of the cause. And you know, to be in all honesty, before responding, which is something that I wanted to do initially, because how dare you, it got me to look up the root cause of why people, and the root cause of looters. And I read so many great articles on people don't call white collar crimes looters. They can be embezzling money. And the word has been used specifically for a certain economically sound group. And honestly, I learned a lot. However, when that's amazing. But when I did respond, it's always good to be. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's always good when discourse promotes like education. So that's all I wanted to say. What were you going to say after that?
Just that, you know, before I could respond quickly, and because no one likes to have a message on your work that says that they're disgusted with your work, and particularly when you were trying to do something that you thought was proactive and positive, no one wants to do that. But I did take time, and I did read up a lot on where and the why and the who of looters, and I learned a lot, and I'm very happy that I did do that. And we've since had a nice discourse back and forth. I explained my reasoning because I didn't apologize because I knew where I was coming from. But I heard him, and we had this really nice discourse back and forth that's been continuing. And I think that that's kind of what a lot of this time frame can be really about, is even when you think you know a lot about a cause. And I think one of the things I had mentioned is, well, I'm a brown Latin gay man and an American, but you can still learn things. And I know you and I had been, one of the first times we ever met was over a conversation after Gay Pride with a bunch of us, and we had a very, not the same conversation, but about race. And I don't know, I think a lot of good can happen through this. I was just curious to know your thoughts on some of this.
Well, like I said, it's always good to where you're not so closed-minded, to where you can actually let people's their views on certain things, how they can actually affect your views, and how you can just take a minute to listen and really do the research and kind of engulf yourself, and like you did, like you learned some things out of your discourse with this other gentleman. As far as like the looters are concerned, I completely understand where they're coming from, because like as a black gay man myself, I have felt I felt unsupported by the society. I felt the frustration that institutionalized racism can have on a person. So it's like I liken it to like when you have a soda bottle and you're shaking it up, and it's going to explode at some point. So I completely understand. I haven't participated in any of the looting myself, but I completely understand where they're coming from. And it's funny that you bring up the conversation that you and I had, because I was having a conversation about the looters with that person that was Ashley. She was also in that conversation that we had as far as the race back in the day after Pride, and she didn't actually agree with me. But I think that through our discourse, she came to see my point of view, and I saw her point of view, and we met in the middle somewhere. So when you can exchange views like that, it's always a good thing.
Absolutely. I remember the conversation that we initially had back, and we don't need to rehash it for everybody here. We can do it another time though, for sure. But and I remember I purposely ignited this conversation, and it was right after Gay Pride, because I've studied race relations for a long time, and I think we can all get on our high horses sometimes, but you can learn from other people. You know, and it's really easy. I started the show off today reading a passage out of Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth.
Who I love.
Yes, about the ego. And when you do a show like this, you get you do have a platform, you think you're coming from a certain reasoning, and sometimes you can be misread, and it can pull up your ego when you read things that are negative about and misread, and you know exactly you didn't mean that at all. But if you do take a breath and you do take the time to do your own research and your own education, you can actually learn things. And I think that's what happened in the first time you and I met. And that's one of the reasons why we're such good friends, is I think because we did all go to a very deep conversation about race and ethnicity that just had happened after Gay Pride. And I think there's a whole intersection of those two things that nothing's going to get figured out right away, but it's a conversation that needs to happen much more than we're willing to go there. So yeah.
And I think that, like, even more than that, the reason that, like, we did become friends is because you took the time to actually, like, see things from my point of view, in my shoes, and vice versa. And I think that is what the crux of this whole movement is all about, and why there are so many non-Black allies that are out there marching for George Floyd, and also Breonna Taylor, and nameless other Black people that have been, murdered by police officers and done unjust things by the system. So, yeah. Step in somebody else's shoes. Walk in somebody else's shoes. It can provide a whole new perspective for you.
For you personally, or just, I would be curious to hear your thoughts as, we just enter Gay Pride Month. It's a monumental year, the 50th anniversary of the Pride March, but also being, like you just stated, a Black gay man. What would you want messaging to go out there to some of your brothers and sisters and your allies?
As far as this movement is concerned, like, we can never forget that the first Gay Pride was a riot. So there's that for people to think on. And just to, take the time out to be kind to one another. And it's not Black people's job to actually, like, inform people of other races what our experience is, but I would invite people to let Black people to let other people in, and because it actually does build bridges. So there's that, and yeah, just walk in other people's shoes.
I really like that you said it's not your job to educate people, but through discourse and through conversation and through the conversation that we had on that Gay Pride, I remember my co-host Jeremy and I really came in with one viewpoint in that particular conversation, and we came out with a different viewpoint based on and even in my current podcast that happened the other day, before reacting, I took a step back and I did my research, and I read a lot of articles on the who and the why of looting. And I learned a lot. And I also learned a lot that supported my own beliefs on it. But I learned that it's not just one group of people. It's very complicated, and I will continue to educate myself because that's what, but I appreciate that, and we should all be, educating ourselves. That's the only way we're going to change, is to have that. And like to continuously quote this book, Drop the Ego. I think that's one of the only ways we're going to be able to do that, to not get over ourselves.
Yeah. And let me just tell you that, like, I'm continually learning things. Like, there's so many things that I didn't learn. I think I shared this with you earlier, like what you said about when you were talking. You just said something. I'm sorry, though.
That's okay.
When you were talking about, because I actually just read so many things today. When you were what were you just saying? Oh man, I lost it. Anyway.
Well, if you think about it,
I'm still learning.
Exactly.
I'm learning. I'm still learning things. Like what you mentioned just a few seconds ago. I didn't know that. And I'm reading things about, like, how the police system was, like, evolved from slave patrols and things of that nature. And I'm just learning so much that I'm apparently losing most of it.
I think that's having an open mind and listening and having these conversations is the way to it. And we will continue them here on this platform. And that's, yeah. Before I let you go,
yes, darling.
We just wrapped up, and for people that haven't been watching much, Kodi is a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, and I've watched this entire season. Can we just say Jada Essence Hole?
Congratulations, Jada Essence.
Congratulations! Oh my God! This was a different year.
Her.
This was a different year, and the finale was plagued by not just coronavirus and people doing this finale in their own homes, which I love the finale. I thought it was like brilliant. I didn't miss the big huge crowd. I also there was a thing they didn't address of a fourth contestant that would have been a part of it all. That's a whole nother drama, and I really loved the three finalists, and really I thought they were all brilliant, and I thought that the finale was, I just loved it. I don't know.
Yeah, it was good. I'm glad that I watched it. I'm glad that I was so invested this season. I had to rewatch Crystals before I like fully appreciated, like, you know, the one where she did I'm Like a Bird.
Yes. Which I love. Who's that?
A little out there.
I loved it
at first.
Who's that contestant?
But I rewatched it, and I'm on board now. I'm with Crystal Method now.
Crystal Method.
I can't wait to. Yeah.
You know what I
can't wait to.
Sorry. You know why I really love Crystal Method is because I do think, you know, in talking earlier, I was talking to somebody on the show here about the leather community, and I was just a guest on another podcast about the leather community. And I do think that communities like this, drag, leather, we have to evolve for the young people and everybody else. There's so much more to be said through different generations. Mm-hmm. And I think that Crystal Method is really pushing the boundaries for drag.
For us.
And I think, go on with your badass. I kind of loved it. The piñata look that...
Oh, the piñata was everything.
Being Mexican here, I was all about the piñata. And there's a like eerie, creepy feeling about it, but she's so sweet and lovable that old club vibe thing that made clubs so fun. I'm all for Crystal Method, and I do love Gigi Good because she's fabulous, but can we not say Jada Essence Hole? I mean, it's all about that to me.
All day, honey. All day.
All day.
She turned it out, and she looked, her like finale gown was stunning.
Stunning. Oh, good. All right. Well, good. And like I said, I know you're going to watch The High Note, which was another recommendation that I watched, and with Tracy Ellis Ross, and you should totally watch it with your mom, Kodi.
Yeah,
I think you're
I'm
really
watching it with my mom.
Okay, all right.
I will let you know as soon as we do, and what she thinks of it, because my mom has. She loves anything sappy, and I feel like she's going to cry on this one. So I can't wait. It's her birthday next week, so I can't wait to make her cry on her birthday. Out of happiness.
Well, on this beautiful Thursday, on this night that we continuously celebrate George Floyd, on this night that we celebrate Gay Pride, Kodi, I salute you and all our audience. I'm just putting my drink up here for you. And I appreciate you, and I love you for doing the show with me. It means the world to me.
I love you too.
All right.
Thank you so much. So I have to actually make myself a drink. I forgot to make myself a drink.
Make yourself a cocktail.
You know.
Thank you,
Cody.
Kodi.
Time for a cocktail.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, love.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Oh my God. Love Kodi. I want to thank you tonight for joining me for Sex with Stevie. I'm live every single Thursday here on Facebook. I will get some of my technical difficulties figured out. But I want to continue to raise awareness for peace and being healthy. And don't forget, we are in a coronavirus here, y'all. Don't forget that too. I want to thank you, and you can follow us at Tags Podcast. You can go to tagspodcast.com. Peace, and I will talk to you soon.